Good morning, everyone. This is Ken McCready from the Maryland Department of Commerce, and welcome to this webinar on the Buy Maryland Cybersecurity Incentive Tax Credit. We partnered with the Cybersecurity Association of Maryland, Inc., and the Better Business Bureau of Greater Maryland to put this on. So we're indeed glad that you've chosen to join us today to learn about this. As we get ready to launch the webinar, I ask that lines be muted in the several cases where people are calling in directly. But we have the Q&A box available on the WebEx for you to type questions as they come up. And we've included some points of contact so you can email questions following this if your questions weren't answered. The webinar slides and the recording will be available for download after the meeting. And will be emailed to attendees. We'll be posting the recorded webinar on the CAMI website at the address listed. BBB will also post it on their website, as I understand it, and Commerce will have a link taking you to the webinar. Just to put the whole thing into perspective, the Maryland State Legislature passed a landmark cybersecurity investment and Buy Maryland tax credit bill in the last session, and today we are focusing on the Buy Maryland Cybersecurity Incentive Tax Credit, which is designed to attract investment in Maryland cybersecurity companies by increasing their revenue, and then just as important, reducing the risk of cyber attacks that small businesses in Maryland make by making those businesses more secure. The introduction will be following as this, and I'll turn it now over to Jody Thomas from the Better Business Bureau.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Ken. Thanks, everyone, for joining today's Buy Maryland Cyber Tax Credit webinar. I'm Jody Thomas, Vice President of Communications and Marketing with the Better Business Bureau of Greater Maryland. BBB's had the fantastic fortune to partner with the Cybersecurity Association of Maryland, Inc., otherwise known as CAMI, on a number of initiatives for several years now. Not only are they a great group of people to work with, their organization, together with Ken and the Maryland Department of Commerce, are really making things happen for small businesses in Maryland. At the time that Stacy reached out to BBB, last February, to ask if we would testify in support of the Buy Maryland cyber legislation, Better Business Bureau knew that 96% of our businesses in Greater Maryland were small businesses. We also knew, according to BBB's 2017 State of Cybersecurity, a study of 1,100 businesses across North America, that the number one factor that hindered a small business from advancing their cybersecurity efforts was a lack of resources. Cybersecurity, unfortunately, is often perceived as more expensive than a small business can afford. And BBB believes that Buy Maryland Cyber, the tax credit specifically, will help change that and help businesses access the products and services that they need to avoid a catastrophic loss and help keep customer data safe. So with that, I'd like to turn the program over to Stacy Smith.
Thanks, Jody. Hi, I'm Stacy Smith, President and CEO of the Cybersecurity Association of Maryland. Thank you all for joining us. As Jody mentioned, we've had a tremendous partnership between our two organizations, with the Better Business Bureau representing so many small businesses and our organization representing Maryland cybersecurity companies. We currently have over 400 of Maryland cybersecurity product and service providers as members of our organization, and they're all featured in an online directory that can be accessed at mdcyber.com/listings. And we were happy to partner with Maryland Department of Commerce and BBB on this actually nationally unique legislation that would help our member companies grow through sales opportunities, but just as important, as Ken mentioned, to help Maryland businesses be more cyber secure. So we're looking forward to this webinar as we explain a little bit more detail about this tax credit, which is a brand new this year, and just actually the details of it were just released recently. So Ken, I will turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Stacy and Jody. Appreciate it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the cyber incentive in general terms, what's involved. Then we're going to address the audience that are cybersecurity companies and want to know how to become a qualified Maryland cybersecurity seller. And then we're going to address the businesses in the audience that want to apply for the tax credit and provide information in those areas. And then we'll provide you points of contact to follow up. This was very complex to implement what was a relatively easy idea. So in order to address all of the requirements that were put in the legislation, the applications were keyed according to those information requirements. So let me jump into it. Also, I mentioned Abby McKnight is here, our tax specialist, and she can be answering your questions and answers as they come in. So to look at the definitions in the program, the incentive cybersecurity by Maryland Cybersecurity Incentive Tax Credit provides a income tax credit of 50% of the cost of purchasing goods and services from qualified Maryland cybersecurity sellers. So it's a 50% tax credit going to small businesses purchasing goods and services from Maryland cybersecurity companies. A qualified Maryland cybersecurity seller, a QMCS, is a cyber company that has been certified by our office in the Department of Commerce as meeting the requirements established by the law for this tax incentive. And a qualified Maryland cybersecurity buyer is any Maryland company with fewer than 50 employees that's required to file an income tax return in the state. So those are the players in this program. Further defining, a cybersecurity business, which is where you get into the definitions of a cybersecurity seller, is any entity organized for profit that is engaged primarily in the development of an innovative proprietary cybersecurity technology or the provision of a cybersecurity service. A cybersecurity tech company can be identified by us if they possess intellectual property or license to produce a product or good intended for very specific cybersecurity-related purposes, that being to detect or prevent an activity intended to result in unauthorized access to or exfiltration of, manipulation of, or impairment to the integrity, confidentiality, or availability of an information system or the information stored or transiting through an information system. So these things are made for lawyers to read and for lawyers and accountants to implement. So we're providing the language from the legislation so you can really identify and make sure you meet those qualifications. A cybersecurity service company must primarily perform, and by primarily we mean that 51% of their revenues come out of these activities, activities identified by NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, in their cybersecurity framework. And those steps being the identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover portions of the cybersecurity framework. The application for a qualified Maryland cyber seller requires information that tells us that this company meets the standards established in the legislation. So those things that we have to look at and certify back to the legislature that we're doing is, first of all, the company that's trying to become a qualified Maryland cyber seller has to be in good standing with the Department of Assessments and Taxation. It has to demonstrate that it's current with its tax obligations. we have to see that it's a for-profit organization and that 51% of its business or its revenues come from the development of cybersecurity technology or the provision of a recognized cybersecurity service. The company also has to demonstrate that its headquarters and base of operations are located in Maryland. It also has to provide evidence looks like somebody can't hear. The presentation should be available if you're hooked in, so we'll see if we can figure out if there's more than one person that's having that. If more than one person is having trouble hearing, please respond. We had somebody say they had to disconnect and reconnect, and then it worked. Demonstrate that its headquarters and base of operations are in Maryland, so that it's a Maryland company. And there's a limitation of $5 million in annual revenue in the legislation, or if a company is minority-owned, woman-owned, veteran-owned, or service-disabled veteran-owned business, or it's located in a hub zone, those businesses can have more than $5 million in annual revenue and still qualify to become a qualified Maryland cyber seller. Finally, the company has to provide evidence that it owns or licenses proprietary cybersecurity technology or primarily provides a cybersecurity service. To apply to become a qualified Maryland cyber seller, looks like people are getting it. Okay, good. The website where you apply is the Commerce website. That's commerce.maryland.gov. And as you go through getting through the finance documents, you can get into the Buy Maryland Cyber Tax Credit application form and download that. We're currently working to try to make it fillable online, but to get it out more rapidly, we've got it as a paper document at this point. So some of the documents that will be required to show that you meet the obligations or requirements established in the previous slide is an SDAT, certification of status, also good standing, and another good standing statement from the comptroller to show that the tax obligations have been met. And then in order for us to figure out if you're primarily a cybersecurity company, we're going to be looking at your websites and business plans and financial statements that are submitted to determine that. If it's a cybersecurity product company, we want to see the evidence of a proprietary technology, either a license, a copyright, or a patent. If you're minority owned or any of those other categories, hub zone and so on, then we need to see proof that you meet those. If a veteran or service-disabled veteran business, we're looking for a copy of the DD-214 or certification as a veteran-owned small business or service-disabled veteran-owned small business from the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. And then a hub zone certificate from U.S. Small Business Administration if you're a hub zone company. Scanning for more questions. Somebody's saying can also just pause the audio, hit play again, no need to disconnect all the way. So now flipping it on the other side, for a company that wants to qualify for the tax credit, it all begins with an invoice from a qualified Maryland cyber seller. The list of qualified Maryland cyber sellers is located at the same website that we provided before. Currently, there's 5 companies with several more pending, and we hope to continue to grow that number, and hopefully there's some cyber companies out there today that will get applications in. So a qualified buyer has an invoice from a qualified seller and then proof of payment of that invoice. They can then submit that with their application, which is fairly short and easy, with an affidavit attesting that they have fewer than 50 people and they're required to file an income tax return. So those are fairly simple pieces of information that we can get from the companies. At that point, we then issue a certificate that the business can use when they're submitting their Maryland state taxes. See if we got anything else. No other questions coming in. So, in conclusion, that this legislature passed this legislation that was proposed by the governor, modified by the legislature, but the act was passed to support the Maryland cybersecurity ecosystem, helping Maryland cyber companies gain more revenue so that they can gain greater investments in their business and grow it and be more effective and grow our cybersecurity industry in the state. But more importantly, to help businesses become more cyber secure. As Jody said, studies show that it's not just large businesses that are attacked. More than half of the attacks that we know about happen against small businesses. And the impact on small business on an attack that a larger business might be able to absorb is often catastrophic. 60% of small businesses that are attacked go out of business within 1 year. Now that could be, other factors could be at play there, but it's tough enough to have a small business, and if you throw a cyber attack against that on all the other challenges of running and operating a small business, it can have catastrophic effects. So we want businesses to be ready to handle that. We need the participation of cybersecurity companies to go through the effort to become qualified sellers, and we need the buyers to be asking people they're buying from whether they're qualified cyber sellers, to give them some incentives to go ahead and move out. Commerce and Better Business Bureau and the Cybersecurity Association of Maryland is committed to your success, whether you're a seller or a buyer, and we want to make sure that you have all the information you require and we can ask questions. So let me see, we got a couple more questions roll in. Let's get that up. Somebody asked, would a buyer is a partnership with 48 employees and 4 partners qualify? If the partners aren't working and they aren't part of the business, then I would say yes, you would qualify. Do the credits earned by a pass-through entity pass to partners' shareholders? Yes, that also will work, and we would have no real way to see that you're probably a pass-through entity in that case as you're applying for it. Once approved as a cyber seller, will we have a logo certification indicator that we can use in our marketing? That's a great idea. This is new. We haven't thought of that. We certainly could do that. But our thought for now is initially you would point people you're selling to the website and the list of qualified sellers where your company's name appears. Any more questions that I can answer? As Stacy said, this is really a one-of-a-kind new program. We're not aware of any other states that have anything like this. We've had lots of inquiries from other states about this, but we want to be able to point to its usage. And so we're depending on you all to help us get the word out that this tool exists, that the state has put $2 million this tax year towards this. So It's retroactive to any purchases you made from a cyber qualified seller back to May 15th, 2018 through December 31st, 2018. So we have $2 million available to put towards covering 50% of the costs absorbed by the buyers. We have $4 million for tax year 2019 beginning January 1st. So the money's out there. The need is definitely out there. We just need to help get the word out so we can get this thing rolling. I'm looking to see if there are any more questions. A couple more came in. Slides are going to be available. They'll be available at the CAMI website, and that's listed in the program. So if you go to mdcyber.com, you'll be able to find that there. We'll also have a link to the webinar on our page, and I'm sure the BBB of Greater Maryland will have it on their page as well. Let's see. Okay, we use resellers to sell our services to their customers. How does the end customer take advantage of the tax credit? That's specifically addressed in the FAQs at the commerce.maryland.gov website. Effectively, as long as your reseller is identifying your product or service and your company in the invoice, and you can provide proof of payment for that invoice, whatever you receive back through the reseller, minus a 20% flat fee that we've adjusted to take out the reseller's portion of that income, then you can get the tax credit on that basis. List of companies that are looking for sellers. We're not anticipating that. There's going to be a lot more buyers out there. We're providing a list of qualified sellers, and that's available for any business to look at. How long after docs filed for seller to receive approval? It varies depending on how complete the initial submission is and how complex it is. In some cases, a company is clearly a cybersecurity company. It doesn't do anything else. It has a product that can be pointed to and has evidence of proprietary technology. That can go very quickly. In cases of cybersecurity services, if a company, a seller is providing lots of different kinds of services, including managed IT services, any of those kinds of things that are IT related, and cybersecurity services on top of that, then it gets hard for us to figure out whether you're primarily a cybersecurity company or not. And that's where the to and fro of questions from us will occur probably as we try to establish that you're primarily a cybersecurity seller. Does it matter if the amount is services or a product? No, it's 50% of the cost of a product or service. Any other questions? Stacy or Jody, do you have anything you'd like to say before we conclude?
Nope, I think I'm good. Thanks, Ken. If anybody
we'll get it posted.
If anybody has any questions of our organization, you can reach us at info@mdcyber.com.
Jody?
Yep, BBB will also get it posted, so if you go to bbb.org and search, we'll have links to the slides as well as a link to the list of providers to date, and I can be reached at jthomas@greatermd.bbb.org.
Throw up the last slide with our points of information. There we go. So Abigail McKnight is our tax specialist. She's the one that will receive your application and start going through it and making sure that all the required information is there. Mark Maraglia is our cybersecurity program manager, and he and I are available to work with cybersecurity companies and any questions they might have on becoming a qualified Maryland cybersecurity seller. Check one more time to see if any more questions popped up. Oh, several more did. If a seller gets approval in 2019, will purchases in 2018 be able to obtain credit?
I think it's approved in January.
Yeah, we hadn't thought of that. I would think we can since we're trying to make this work for the first time around, I think we'll be flexible in making that happen, but probably not past January, February, working through it. If the service is monthly, then you would the buyer would provide invoices and proof of payment for the number of months that they're applying for the credit for. So if it's, $10 a month, you've got from May through December, and it's 10 times 8 months or whatever that is, would be whatever the credit is. What if the division of the organization is 100% cyber, but the other divisions are different? The company has to be primarily a cyber company. We can't work our way through divisions and things. The company has to be a qualified cyber seller. Let's see. I think that's it. Any other questions? Coming right up to the half hour. So on behalf of Secretary Mike Gill, CAMI, and the Better Business Bureau of Greater Maryland, I thank you for your attendance and interest. We look forward to working with you to make this program successful. Let's make Maryland cyber secure, because Maryland is where cyber works. Thank you so much. Got one more question. I just had a thank you. Good enough. Take care, everyone. Bye now.